Oops, another watch.
Welcome back, my fellow collectors who treat online auctions like archaeological expeditions. We're already at part 3 of this massive mystery watch box, and honestly I still have no idea what's waiting at the bottom of this thing. So far we've seen everything from cheap quartz survivors to genuinely interesting vintage watches, and a few pieces that may have been stored inside a washing machine. And there are still more watches in this box, some good, some questionable, and probably at least one that hasn't worked properly since the Soviet Union collapsed. Anyway, let's see what else is hiding in here. First watch is Citizen Elegance. Very clean looking dress watch with a textured dial, Roman numerals and gold hands. I actually really like the octagonal case on this one. It makes it stand out a bit from typical quartz dress watches. Condition also looks surprisingly decent. Value-wise, this is probably around a $30 watch. Next up is this ladies' Zenith Sporto. Zenith is actually a very respected Swiss brand founded in 1865, known for making high-quality mechanical movements and famous chronographs like the El Primero. This one is definitely rough though. It's missing the crown, the dial has a lot of wear, and overall it has clearly lived a pretty hard life. Still, being a vintage Zenith, it absolutely has some collector value. In working condition, these can be around 100 euros, but like this, it's probably closer to a $40 watch. Here we have a Finnish Leijona, which means lion. It's a quartz day-date watch. These textured linen-style dials usually sell a bit better than plain ones. This one has some wear, but overall it still looks pretty decent. Value is probably around $20. Then there's this Regal quartz watch. Pretty simple tank style fashion watch with a nice sunburst dial. Value about $3. This little lady's Lanco is actually a pretty charming vintage piece. Lanco was a Swiss watch brand founded in the 1870s, and collectors especially know them for their old automatic watches and unique compressor-style dive watches from the 1960s. This one has a really nice vintage look with a silver sunburst dial. Ladies' watches usually aren't worth huge money. Value-wise, this is probably around a $20 watch. I can hear some ticking, so it's trying to run. That's good. Oh boy. Yeah. Next one. Cheap no-name watch. This tiny Timex has serious 1980s department store vibes. But I do kind of like the case design though. Nothing rare here, but Timex has always been good at making simple, everyday watches that just do the job. Value-wise, this is probably a $10 watch. Here's a little citizen lady's watch. Nothing especially rare here, but that bracelet is actually pretty nice and definitely helps the value a bit. Overall, it has a classy vintage jewelry watch look to it. Value-wise, This is probably around a $20 watch. Now this one is pretty interesting. This is a vintage Rita ladies watch, and there is very little information out there about the brand. A lot of these smaller Swiss brands appeared during the early to mid 1900s, making affordable mechanical watches that were often sold through local jewelers. And the back has Nelly engraved on it, which is always a nice little piece of history. I do really like the textured dial and those old cathedral style hands though. Sadly, it's fully wound and not running. Value about $15. Here's a vintage piece from Mora. Even though this says Swiss made, the Mora name actually has Swedish roots, connected to the town of Mora in Sweden, which was famous for traditional grandfather clocks and painted wooden clocks. Later on, the Mora name was used for Swiss-made watches, sold mainly in the Scandinavian market. This one is extremely rough, but honestly the aged dial gives it a lot of character. Value is hard to determine, but I'd say about $20. Another Lanco. This one has definitely lived a hard life. The crystal needs a serious polish. And the back is rusty, with some of the coating missing. Realistically, this is maybe a $5 watch. Here's a little quartz pocket watch with a decorative case back. Nothing special here though, this is only a $2 watch. This poor Timex looks like it was loose in a toolbox for 20 years. At best, this is probably around a $2 watch. I think this is a Zvezda from the Soviet Union. Zvezda means star in Russian, and these watches were made by the Penza watch factory starting around the 1940s. This one is definitely very rough though, and it's also missing the crown. At best, this is only worth about $10. Here's a tiny little Citizen Quartz ladies watch. Very simple design and kind of elegant in that classic 1980s way. The bracelet is broken though, so this would probably be a pretty tough sell. Maybe around a $5 watch max. Here's a no-name quartz watch with a surprisingly decent looking wavy dial. The design is actually not terrible, but without any real brand behind it, there's not much value here. This one is from Focus, a brand that was pretty common in the Nordic countries during the quartz era. Nothing rare here though, maybe around a $3 watch. Here we have a little Lorus diver style quartz watch. Lorus is actually owned by Seiko, and they mainly made affordable everyday watches like this. This one has a nice simple diver look, but condition is pretty rough. Maybe around a $10 watch. This Accord watch has a pretty clean minimalist look to it. The textured bracelet is probably the most interesting part here. Accord was one of many smaller quartz-era brands making affordable fashion watches like this. I would say this is a $5 watch. Looks like this Alpha has officially entered parts watch territory. Alpha was one of many smaller vintage watch brands making affordable mechanical watches during the early to mid 1900s. This one is missing the hands and has seen much better days. At best, this is only worth a few dollars. Same kind of small pocket watch as before. Value $2. Another little lion dress watch, nothing special here, a $5 watch. Here's a Jardina quartz watch. Jardina was likely one of those lesser-known names from the quartz boom years, rather than a major watchmaker. So nothing very interesting. Maybe around a $5 watch. Now this is a pretty clean-looking Orient quartz. Simple design, but a nice looking everyday watch. Without the bracelet, a $20 watch. Another no-name quartz watch. And it's broken. No value here. Here we have a little Gemis quartz watch. It's in pretty rough shape overall, and unfortunately there's really no value here. If lucky, perhaps $3. This Ricardo quartz has a pretty clean field watch style design. Definitely one of those budget quartz watches from the 1990s or early 2000s. Maybe around a $5 watch. Here's an old Q&Q quartz watch. Q&Q is owned by Citizen, and the name stands for quality and quantity. This one is pretty rough though, maybe around a $3 watch. Now this is a much more interesting find. Glycine is a respected Swiss brand founded in 1914, and they're especially known for their airman pilot watches. This one has a really nice blue dial and classic vintage tool watch look. Condition is fairly good, only the crystal needs a quick polish. This is maybe a $60 watch. This little CMI quartz watch has a clean minimalist design with the Roman numeral dial. I actually don't know much about this brand, so if anyone has information about CMI, feel free to let me know in the comments. Looks like a $5 watch. Oriole. Another one of these little supermarket watches. No real value here. Limit, okay, no value here. This one looks quite old, and interestingly there's no name on the dial at all. A lot of these older anonymous watches were sold through local jewelers back in the day. The engraved back is also a nice little piece of history. Feels like it's not winding, so there goes the value. This is maybe a $5 watch. Now this is a pretty nice vintage Leijona. This one definitely has a lot of age and character to it. Sadly, it's fully wound and not running, so this is probably closer to a $5 watch. This little citizen has a pretty nice dark blue dial. These slightly thicker vintage citizen quartz models actually sell surprisingly well sometimes. The crystal is cracked, unfortunately, but I should have a donor for this watch. This is maybe a $25 watch. Another one of these, but in different color. Yeah. Here's another vintage lion, and this one actually has a pretty interesting bracelet design. The deep blue dial also looks really nice on this watch. It's fully wound and trying to run, but not quite there yet. Maybe a $15 watch. This Newport watch is definitely more of a fashion watch than a collector piece. No value here. This Citizen 7 has a really nice textured gold tone case and bracelet design. Definitely a very 1980s look, but in a good way. Citizen 7 models are a bit more collectible than some of the generic quartz pieces in this box. This one is in quite good condition, so maybe a $20 watch. Here's a Champion quartz watch with a pretty clean gold tone design. Nothing especially valuable here, maybe a few dollars. Another Focus. I kind of like the black dial on this one, but still, there's not much value here, maybe a few dollars. Here's another Q&Q quartz, and there's a huge crack on the crystal. Feels heavy and seems to be of quality like the name indicates, but still it's only a $5 watch. Here's another vintage lion. This one is 17 ruby. Definitely a well-worn survivor. The dial and crystal have both seen much better days. It's fully wound and trying to run, but it keeps stopping. In this condition, this is probably around a $5 watch. Here's a little pocket watch with a pretty decorative case design. Catorex. It's actually a real Swiss watch company, and they mostly made affordable quartz watches and pocket watches like this. Nothing especially valuable here though. This is a $5 watch. Very basic Q&Q watch. No value. Exactly same Newport as we saw earlier. Yeah. Very fake looking Tissot. Oh boy. This chunky one is quite messed up. LCD is broken and it's missing the case back cover. Another no-name one, no value here. That is something. At least it has a picture of Rose inside it. Sheesh. A deck. Very worn out. No point putting in a new crystal. Unfortunately, no value. Another limit. Yikes. Nope. Another no-name watch, but this one is actually kind of fun looking. The bright yellow dial and colorful bezel definitely give it some personality. No real value here, but at least it's not boring. A broken fashion watch. Straight to the pile. This is definitely one of the more fun-looking watches from the box. I honestly don't recognize the brand, but the colorful decorative case gives it almost an old fantasy or storybook kind of look. Probably more of a fashion watch than anything collectible, maybe around a $5 watch. And here's another no-name quartz diver style watch. Pretty generic overall, but it's in quite good condition. On a good day you might get $5 for this. Another Lion watch. A little bit of cleaning and this will be a good basic everyday watch. Value $10. Here's a Gantt watch with a modern design. Believe it or not, but people actually buy these. This is maybe around a $20 watch. This giallo actually has a pretty cool minimalist design. The black and red color combination gives it a very modern fashion watch look. No huge value here, but visually it's kind of fun. Maybe around a $10 watch. This tank-shaped lion actually has a pretty nice minimalist look to it. These rectangular models usually sell a bit better than the round ones. I've sold similar ones for around 20 before, so that's probably a fair value for this one too. Okay, a wooden fashion watch. No value here, I would say. This titanium lion is actually pretty decent. The sapphire crystal and lightweight titanium case is always nice to have. With a quick cleanup, this is probably around a $20 watch. There were quite a few low-value fashion watches, but I did find this amazing green dial Revue Sport. Revue was a respected Swiss brand, and this one has a really nice vintage look to it. The crystal is cracked and it's missing the stem and crown, but with those repaired and a new crystal, this could easily be around a $70 watch. As it sits now though, I'd probably value it closer to $30. This Lanco 17 jewels actually looks pretty nice with that green sunburst dial. The crystal definitely needs a polish, but overall this one has a really nice look to it. And surprisingly, it actually seems to be running. I'd probably value this one around $40. This Citizen will be the last watch for this video. Looks clean. I'd say it's a $10 watch. We also still have a ton of these Seiko and other watch parts left in the box, but I think I'll save the remaining watches and all the spare parts for the final episode. We actually found some pretty nice pieces in this video, even though there were definitely quite a few fashion watches mixed in there too. Overall though, I'm really happy with what we've found so far, and honestly, it never hurts to end up with a pile of Seiko spare parts. But that's it for now. Once again, I really appreciate you watching, and I always enjoy showing you what I find. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.